Oh, g'day, I'm Chad from the Beekeeper's Daughters, Bees for Our Next Generation. In this clip, we're going to be talking about feeding bees, specifically feeding bees sugar. So why would we feed bees when they naturally can forage for nectar and make their own honey, or they forage for pollen? Well, there's two main reasons for feeding bees. One is to prevent the colony from starving. So it might be that there's a lack of nectar available at the time. It might be really bad weather and they can't get out of the hive and forage. They might have run out of their food stores over the winter, and heading into spring they need food to survive and grow. And then the second main reason is to try and stimulate the hive for it to boost itself and really grow ready for the nectar season. So we feed sugar to the colony, to the hive, to stimulate the queen to lay eggs in preparation for the peak nectar flow, so that the hive or colony is at its peak when the nectar flow is at its peak. So what do we feed bees? We've talked about sugar, so we can feed them raw sugar, and that really helps the colony, a colony that's established, to continue growing and maintain itself. And you might want to do that before winter, in autumn before winter, so that they've got stores. We can also feed them sugar syrup, and that's a mixture of sugar diluted with water, and that's really common and popular because bees can eat that really easily. It's the closest to natural nectar, and they can take it into their hive and store it really easily. We can also feed the bees honey. Now, bees love honey, they make honey. But it's actually the least common thing to feed bees, because typically honey is taken away and consumed, and also honey can naturally hold diseases. So by feeding bees honey that you are not familiar where it's from, or you can't guarantee that the hive that it came from didn't have disease, is really, really risky, so you have to be careful. So how do you feed the hives sugar? Well, there's a lot of ways and a lot of different methods, typically involving some sort of feeder of various size or type. But a really common method is the top feeder. And here's one I prepared earlier, and you've seen it before. This sits at the top of the hive. You can fill it with hive syrup, and bees can come up into this compartment safely, drink the syrup without drowning. So let's chuck one of these on a hive. So the top feeder with the sugar syrup is put at the very top of the hive so that bees can come up, drink the syrup, bring it back down to the hive. And what it means, being at the very top, is that the beekeeper can come anytime, just lift the lid, lift the cover, and put more syrup in without having to touch the hive, without having to go in the hive or even suit up. One important thing that we forgot to mention was, while sugar syrup is really good for stimulating the colony, helping them grow in spring, we don't want to be feeding them syrup during the peak of the honey flow, when they're actually filling their honey supers for the honey that we're going to take off later. So we don't want this sugar syrup to be stored in their honey supers, because it's not honey. It's not made from natural nectar.